was asked to kick things off by talking about how climate change intersects with planning, and given the nature of the presentations today and tomorrow, which are on extreme events, that will also be part of what I tend to focus on. To begin with, I think we're in a field that is got certain roots. When we talk about impacts to climate change and adapting to climate change, there are different roots to this. One of those roots is natural hazards research, and there's a well-known newsletter that's produced by the University of Colorado called the Natural Hazards Observer, and they had this cartoon several years ago, which I thought really spoke to me, where you've got two people standing in front of this board looking at a whole range of adjectives or descriptors for the field of disasters or hazard studies. Things like riskology, hazardology, guessology, oh my god studies, and then captured reads. We've got to call it something, right? And it's because there is the conundrum here, which is that we're trying to produce information for something, but we're not sure what the perspective is, where we're coming from. Is it a natural science perspective? Is it a social science perspective? Is this about the psychological aspects of perception of risk? Is it about something that is less emotional and more just technical? We can compute probabilities, we can compute frequencies and likelihoods, we can solve this through rational engineering, landscape architecture, rational planning, appropriate economic incentives, we can get the bylaws and the building codes right, everything should happen appropriately. But as a society, we keep on being surprised. Even before we talk about climate change, we keep on being surprised. Things happen that take us away from the path that we all thought we would be on as a community. Enter climate change onto an already difficult area, how you manage cities and resources for dealing with extreme events. Put climate change on top of that, you create a whole new set of problems. And so climate change on top of something like this, which is already, I think, got some issues, and you see where we have this challenge of trying to figure out how we're going to do this research in a sustained way, where we can learn something new, where we can pass it on to practice, and doing that despite the fact that there continue to be some uncertainties about what future climate is going to look like. I'm going to offer three points for this, which I'm sure can be debated, but this is something that I've come to think about over the years, that I've been trying to work in the middle between climate and decision making. The first is, I do believe that choreography matters. I think that if we're going to try to make climate change science relevant to decision making, not adaptation, I think it does matter how the conversation starts, and there is more than one way to do this. And I'm going to talk about that. The second is that context matters. Social scientists have been trying to tell physical scientists for a long time that you can't just dump a lot of climate data on people and expect that they're going to run with it. We're going to have to create conversations that truly engage people with local knowledge, and they can't see that they've been brought in at the back end. They have to be brought in at the front end, and in a meaningful way, because it might change the very nature of the exercise we're going to embark on. So when I talk about the importance of extension agents, the idea here is that the local partners, the practitioners, the professionals, the people that are responsible for managing systems we depend on, can become climate change extension agents in a way that researchers cannot. And if we're able to get them directly engaged in this, the legacy of a particular project will be a lot more than the referee publication. It'll be those people who will go back to their jobs in planning or in municipal policy or something and carry this on, and then the roles will reverse and they will initiate things, and those in the research community will end up being the resources for that. And the third point has to do with tools. Every discipline enters into this with its own history, its own background, and its own set of theories and tools. And one thing climate change does is it challenges all of them. And it is very difficult sometimes to get other disciplines to look inward and explore how a changed climate affects their tools and the applications of their tools. And not all of these tools are going to be quantitative. Some will be qualitative. The whole role of dialogue in this is going to be extremely important. And really what we're after, at least what my point here about what we're after, is how climate change information gets inserted in an explicit way into this whole process. And moving beyond the damage report, what we're talking about here is how you assess alternative response measures. How do you know if a particular adaptation strategy or a portfolio of them? And I think you'll all understand that more than likely when we're going to talk about adaptation, it will be a portfolio. It won't be about single measures. How can we assess how well they will work in a scenario context? Given that not only will climate change, but development patterns will change the exposures and sensitivities on the ground at the same time. So we have to somehow insert this into that process. Now, a number of you have probably seen this before. This is the record of billion-dollar events, property casualty loss events, as recorded by Munich Re, which is one of the world's major reinsurance companies. And the trend in this figure from 1950 to 2006 is clearly increasing, but the increase is being caused not by the red bars, which is the geologic hazards, the earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanoes, which, if you look at where the red bars are, generally 1 to 2 events a year, there hasn't really been a trend in those. No, the upward trend is happening because of the green, blue, and yellow bars combined, which are all weather-related. Extreme weather events. The green referring to windstorms, the blue to flood, the yellow to temperature. There are more billion-dollar extreme weather events happening now than there used to be. And yet, the trend in the geologic events are the same. Why is that? Is it because, as a society, we have learned how to hold the line on the geologic billion-dollar events? We've learned how to plan for them, learned how to design for them, learned how to make decisions to keep our exposure constant, despite the fact that population has grown? If that's the case for geology, why not for weather? Why couldn't we make those same decisions for weather? Or are we just a little less smart when it comes to that? Or has the statistics around extreme weather changed to the point that we are being surprised? Is climate change partly responsible for the change in our exposure to extreme weather as opposed to extreme geologic events? This is the question that gets raised by Munich Re, by others in the insurance industry. It's one of the reasons why the Institute for Catastrophic Loss Reduction exists, is because the insurance industry has said, we need to learn about this. Something is going on here that is different from the geologic hazards. And they're not the first ones to make this point. This point has been raised over and over again by people in the natural hazards field for a long time. To reinforce this, here's a figure from Evan Mills' 2005 paper, comparing trends of weather-related losses versus non-weather-related losses, property insurance premiums, gross domestic product, and population. So these are all indicators compared to where these particular indicators were in 1980. So they're all changed so that they all equal 100 in 1980. And you'll notice that the solid line, which is insured weather-related losses, has increased relative to where it was in 1980, far faster than any other indicator. Far faster than total non-weather-related losses. In fact, far weather than total weather-related losses. And faster than property insurance premiums, GDP, and population. The insurance industry has experienced, in relative terms, more losses than non-weather related issues. And it's increasing at a faster rate than GDP and population. Far faster. So, we have the attribution question. Mills says, we need to better understand the compounding roles of increasing vulnerability in climate change. Roger Pilkey says there is no scientific basis that this is happening because of climate change. It's all a whole lot of bad development decisions. We are moving in harm's way. And we are doing it because we want to be there for other reasons. We want to be near the coast because it's beautiful and the marketplace says so. And the cities will let people develop billion-dollar massive developments there because they want the property tax revenue. So people want to be there, the cities want them to be there. Doesn't matter the fact that climate folks will tell them, you know, there are changes and risks that are taking place here. Damn it, I want to be here. And if a hurricane comes and knocks my house down and I can't get private insurance, I expect my government to compensate me for my losses and to let me go back. But on the other hand, surely we haven't been dumb farmers all along. Surely people have learned from previous extreme events that maybe building codes should be better enforced. Maybe there should be changes in zoning. Maybe there's been some adaptation that has taken place over the years. So that's why I have Kunkel's quoting here. Surely there have been ongoing societal responses that should have compensated for previous experiences. So this trend that we're seeing is not a gross loss trend, it is a net loss trend. The net between the change in the risk and the damage and the adaptation that should have already happened to, say, hurricanes that occurred in the early 90s, for example, or the major drought in 1988 that took a lot of North America. Where is all of that? Dennis Milletti, who wrote the book Disasters by Design, has said, society makes the assumption that technology and management can control nature and protect people. We've always believed this.